when somebody asks me, what did I do out of college and how did that change? Well, let me tell you, the first thing I did out of college is try to figure out how in the frig am I going to pay all these debts back? So what I really worried about was just making money. And I made $725 a month. And I realized that wasn't going to work, even though it was a lot of years ago. And so I never had a plan. In fact, one of the things I loved about Ed McCracken at SGI is he always said if you do a plan, you kind of limit what the possibilities are. It's not quite that simple. I mean, that's like saying there are no plans in the world. It doesn't work. But the spirit of what he's saying is correct. You can hinder yourself by saying, I'm only capable of doing this, and this is my next step, and this is my next step, and this is my next step. That's kind of a boring concept. What I always figured out is if I was really fascinated by something and I could kind of pick up on it and run, that I would get noticed. And I always felt, I hate people that come in and say, what's my next job? My answer usually is your next job is somewhere else. Because, first of all, I don't have time. Let me give you a tidbit. This is a tidbit, Tina. Nobody gives a shit about your career but your mom. And you. Seriously. Your manager doesn't, because your manager's worried about his career. His manager doesn't. Nobody else does. You have to worry about it. That doesn't mean you go asking everybody what your next career job is, because they're worried about their stuff. So you know what? Just do it. Get ready for the job. Do the next job. Prove yourself capable. I always got the next job because they always sort of figured out somehow I'd sort of done it. And gee, Carol's kind of taken that leadership role and we're going to put her there. So the first thing you always have to do is do a good job in what you're assigned to, and then see how you can help. How can you help the corporation? Get on task force. Assign yourself to other groups. Do something that shows people that you're interested and that you, therefore, are a viable asset. So the way I sort of thought, and by the way, this wasn't formulated at 21. So I'm not being that stupid. But I always sort of thought, it's kind of that thing you kind of learn in school, which is if you get good grades, people think that's nice. And you get attention if you get the A's, and you're doing a good job. It's that way in business. You don't have to toe the line and be a yes person, but you're doing a good job. You're interesting. You're thinking about things, and you're just trying to help the organization out. Because if you do that, you know who the biggest beneficiary is? You. And it isn't about somebody else helping you manage that. And so I don't think I actually changed that much during the time. I never in 1,000 years thought that I'd be a CEO. The town I grew up in had 800 people. My company has 6,000, so there you go. So it wasn't, I didn't have that. I call that the male dominant gene, that you have to run something. I didn't have that. That's supposed to be funny. You guys, maybe you're of another era. Maybe it doesn't work anymore. No wonder I'm retiring. So it's just more of make sure you're learning. If you're not learning, then you better move on because you're the one hurt. That means you won't be an interesting person because you're not learning. So if you really aren't learning, go find something else to do. Don't beat yourself. But don't get confused by, now I'm getting into my little rules here. Don't ever get confused by a bad boss. Bad bosses are really good for you because they help you understand what you'll never do when you're a boss. You don't learn as much from a good manager as you do from a bad manager. Because a good manager, things are kind of going well. And you don't think a whole lot about how it's happening. With a bad manager, you figure out pretty fast. It's got to be that way with a professor. You get a bad professor, you're like, ugh. You get a good professor, you just feel good, right? It's that concept. So don't mix up a learning curve and a bad manager problem. You could still be learning with a bad manager. Stay there. If you truly aren't learning, go someplace else. That's the biggest piece of advice I can give you on that.